Hello and welcome to another video lecture for CMAR 4329 Hyperlocal Communication. Today we're going to be talking about audio and podcasting. So let's start talking about audio. Broadcast audio is really the first electric mass communication platform. The speed of its production and its far reach did what really newspaper couldn't at that time. So, while often overlooked as a media compared to what we have nowadays with digital multimedia and video, audio still holds a special, powerful role in communication, which is what we're going to look at today. So, I understand that visuals, they're attractive and they're also highly in demand. More people are going to be going to YouTube watching videos than some website like SoundCloud. And there's no doubt about it, but no media is better than the other. It's just they all have their special uses, and audio has some advantages that video doesn't. The key is finding the right medium for each work. So audio is a powerful storytelling medium. Where photos and videos show, audio is like the written word in that it requires the audience to use their mind's eye. So they must visualize what they hear. And this lets the audience create their own connection by hearing the sounds and listening to the words, and so there's this bond between the audience and the story. And well-crafted audio pieces can be more powerful simply by what the audience imagines than what they could ever see. So audio is an ideal broadcast in its simplicity. It does take more effort than writing and taking a photo, but recording and editing audio can be done on a smartphone. And not having to be concerned with the visual aesthetics, that really frees you to focus in on just the story and the sound quality, and not so much by how it looks like. One other great point about audio is its flexibility. It doesn't require this big bulky equipment. Like I said, it can be done on a smartphone. And it doesn't take a bunch of sophisticated know-how. All you're having to worry about is the audio, not the video or visuals or anything else. It's easy enough for many stories to become audio stories, and for audio to be implemented into multimedia presentations. And so because of all these variety of uses, audio's flexibility is a great strength for being used on online communications. But writing for broadcast media, video included, is different than just simply writing for a blog. Audio and video target different senses than print. Reading a blog, that uses sight. And you lead with the important details, and you write broad, and you go down towards the lesser important details and the more specific. It's what we know as the inverted pyramid. So a reader's not going to bat their eye when they see a bunch of statistics and times and dates or these formal looking sentences. But audio-video work targets a completely different sense. It targets hearing. And so audiences listen to audio. So that means the writing needs to be understood the first time and have clarity. Especially if it's live, people have to understand what they're hearing that first time because they're not going to get another chance. And furthermore, it's got to hold the listener's attention. So to achieve these goals, audio writing needs to be conversational. And so that isn't to say audio must be unprofessional, but it should sound like we talk, like having a very polite conversation. So don't get bogged down in jargon and don't speak with too much flourish. Your script should just look like you're having a one-sided conversation. So a key to writing conversationally is by writing simply. Long-winded sentences cause audiences to drone out and possibly even miss information due to how long they are. So simple, short statements, these are going to be the most effective for broadcast media. A good rule of thumb is to keep one idea or fact to each sentence. If you're layering on more facts and more information in each sentence, it's time to maybe break it up and start a new sentence. So one sentence equals one fact. Because of the differences between audio and video, you also want to present the information differently. So to present it most effective with audio, it needs to be presented in kind of a chronological narrative. We like to hear stories. That's just it. So, once upon a time, this happened, that happened, they lived happily ever after. A beginning, a middle, and an end. Find ways to tell your audio stories that can follow that process, and people are more likely to tune in. So let's talk about the different types of audio that you could possibly record. First off, we have voiceovers, and this would simply be the narration of you reading a script. So think of like a reporter giving some kind of report, or a narrator reading a story. That would be what we'd consider a voiceover. Now, a lot of stories, you want to have people share their part of it, not just have you say it for them. And so interviews are a powerful element for sharing information and for stories. So in that case, it's not you doing the narration, but you going out and recording somebody else. So voiceovers, interviews, those are great ways to be using audio. So another element that you may not be thinking about would be just sound. If you're talking about the bustling streets in New York, recording the sound of the taxis going by and people shouting and all these things, that brings me right there. So natural sound is another use of audio in building your stories. And while this would maybe, you could consider it a subcategory of interviews, another thing would be imported audio clips. And that would be an example of like the president having given a speech and that being made publicly available, and then you taking a segment of that speech and using it in your story. So not just sound that you record, but also sound that's available to you to legally use. All those different types of audio you can use in your presentation. And there are a lot of different presentation types for audio. So understand that not every communication form is right for every story. If you're looking to share a story, then one of the best methods to do that would be to simply give a report that combines a mixture of different audio elements. So a voiceover will typically serve as your main narrative element, with somebody conveying the information. Interviews get woven in to bring perspective and to hear from the people themselves. And then finally, natural sound gets layered underneath of it all to help bring the audience there and to really sell it. So carefully crafting them all together allows you to build this complex piece that could be a standalone or be part of a multimedia presentation. But if you're going to share a story, a report is probably the best way to go. Now, if you want to discuss a topic more in depth and repeatedly, do it more frequently, a podcast might be the best option. Podcasts are these audio recordings that you're able to have downloaded, and they're usually in the form of a series and allow followers to subscribe to them to receive future downloads. And we're going to discuss that a little bit more in depth later in this lecture. Now, some of the most powerful presentations are multimedia presentations. So audio slideshows are a simple way to get really the best of both worlds. By combining audio with photography, you can really have this presentation that engages multiple senses and allows the audience to connect even stronger. So similar to a regular slideshow with photos, it's composed of several images, but now it has the addition of a background audio track that plays throughout. And I've seen some great examples of this, of listening to a narration as the photos kind of cycle through. I've even seen by NPR a whole website built talking about the Ebola crisis, and different photos were shown on different pages, and as you click each page, sounds pop up. So if you're hearing about medical staff going to an African village, you hear the sounds of that. And if you hear about the hospital, you hear the sounds of the hospital. And so it really just had this moment where you could kind of get into the story. But regardless, your story is going to have different ways that it can take shape. So finding the best ways to tell your story and use audio, that's the key. So while still a fairly simple media to work with, audio still requires having the right equipment for the job. And fortunately, it can all be done with a smartphone and having the right apps. But there are other inexpensive tools you could use as well, which we'll talk about. But recording audio with a smartphone, that's a built-in feature. There's plenty of audio recording apps that you could download, but almost every phone I've come across has had an audio recording app right into the phone. But if you want, some phones do allow you to have external microphones that you could plug in and record with a much more professional quality microphone. Because the ones in smartphones aren't that great. But a lot of phones don't have that ability. But if it does, that's something you could think about. So if you have to use a smartphone, there's a few things you can keep in mind. First off, make sure you're in a quiet environment. A small enclosed area like an office. First off, keeping the door shut, that's going to keep noises from outside from coming in. And then finally, that smaller area is going to help kind of dampen the echo. A larger room, that echo is going to come out and keep bouncing around and just really distort your audio. Another important thing is to keep the microphone near the audio source. So if you're planning on recording your voice, make sure you keep the microphone close to your mouth. Not completely in there, but close enough that it can get a nice solid recording. Now, if the audio source is too loud, then actually you do want to back away the smartphone or microphone so that it doesn't have too much of a disturbance, as loud noises tend to distort audio. Now, as I mentioned, smartphones, they don't have the best microphones, so if you're looking to do a lot of audio recording, a really useful investment might be to get an audio recorder, a small little handheld device. You slap an SD card in there, or it records directly to the device, and you can use that for audio recording as well. Now, editing audio can be as simple as cleaning up the front and back of a clip, just getting rid of some of the dead air at the front and back, or it could be this sophisticated audio report that's going to use a lot of different elements like we talked about earlier. Now, for a smartphone, there's a variety of apps that you could use that can trim and edit your audio, maybe add effects, and then you can export it in a variety of different file formats. And while this can get some projects done, more sophisticated works might require more powerful editing tools. So import the audio to your computer, and then you can use editing software to get a lot more options for your work. Now there's some paid audio editors out there, but there is one that's really good. It's a feature-rich, free audio editor called Audacity, and you can just Google Audacity. It's a free download for Windows or Macs, and you can use that and have a lot of different options when you're creating audio works. And finally, there's a lot of places to share your audio. Some we'll talk about a little bit later when we talk about podcasting. But one of the most popular sites is SoundCloud, which is kind of like YouTube except for audio. But once it's online, you can share that link wherever you want. But let's go ahead and switch gears and finally start talking about podcasting. So we discussed it as a series of audio files that's available for subscribing to downloads. Podcasting is ideal for news, updates, or any topic that can have a regular discussion. So this isn't for one-shot discussions or reports. This is for something you may want to continue and carry on and make as a series. And podcasts are being used for all kinds of things, for education, advocacy, marketing, entertainment, and they're being used to great effect to reach hyperlocal audiences, as it requires the consumer to download the media. So the people that want it, they've got to go and subscribe and download the stuff. So here's a few examples of some podcasts that are being used out there. The Chicago Police Department, they actually create a weekly podcast that shares success stories of community policing, and they make that available. There's another one called Farmer to Farmer, and it's a podcast by farmers for farmers about agricultural topics. And one that's going around is called Another Round. It's a podcast with content geared towards the issues African American women are facing. So podcasting is a great method to generate a following and really be a thought leader in your industry. And as I talked about, podcasting doesn't require a studio's worth of equipment. It can be done with nothing more than a smartphone. It's really not the greatest tool for the job. It could be done. But if you're really serious about podcasting, get some simple tools to improve your audio quality. Why? Well, after all, you want people to listen, and poor audio quality is going to tune people right out. So just a little bit of an investment can make your podcasting a lot stronger. A designated USB microphone is going to greatly improve your audio quality. One of those will set you back about $50 to $100 for an entry-level microphone. Not too bad if you plan on doing this quite frequently. So for recording, you'll still want that small enclosed quiet room, your computer. You could use Audacity to record and edit, but you also want a decent pair of headphones, as you want to be able to listen to what you've recorded to check for any kind of disturbances. You certainly don't want to upload anything that sounds bad. So for not too much, you could actually get into podcasting and have that available. So what do you do with it once it's finished? Well, once you're done and you've exported it, you want to upload it so you can share it. Now, you can certainly post your files to SoundCloud. We talked about that. But there are other services as well. Google Play, the iTunes Store, and Amazon, they offer podcast hosting, and those are popular sites people frequent. But there's other sites like archive.org and Audio Boom, and these are popular free alternatives, kind of like SoundCloud. But regardless of what you've decided to upload it to, once you've published it, you can share that podcast on your blog or social media and encourage listeners to subscribe. So those are just a variety of the things you can be doing with audio to enrich your stories and to really target audiences hyperlocally. That is it for this lecture. I'll catch you next time.